So I thought that I'd ask some questions tonight to start off with, since I have people to answer. I didn't before. So before we talk about eating well to aging well, maybe we should ask, what does it mean to age well? What is aging well? How would you define aging well?
Being comfortable in your own skin.
Being comfortable in your own skin? Someone else?
Staying away from you as much as possible.
Staying away from the doctor. I think that's really good. I try to do that as well. I don't like doctors.
Well, I'm going to steal one from you because you taught me this a long time ago. You want to live, here's a chart, your health and your life.
Yeah.
You want to go all the way out. You want to stay as healthy as you can, and then you just going to want to go straight down.
That's called the life curve. And you want to stay above the line of what? Dependence, right? As long as you can, you want to be independent. And that's aging well, too.
What about memory?
Memory. You want to maintain your own memory, or your physical and mental abilities, right? Your individuality, because when you lose your memory, you lose a lot of your individuality, don't you? Yeah. All right, any other thoughts? Kate?
Mobility or functional capacity?
Mobility. Once you start to lose your mobility, pretty soon you can't live independently. And so aging well has to do with our physical capacity to move safely from point A to point B, doesn't it? Yeah. So that's all part of aging well. Okay, this is the same question, kind of, but a little different. What is a life well lived? Don't you want to get, close to the latter part of life and say, I've had a life well lived? What do you mean when you say that person really has lived their life well? What's a life well lived? It's a related question, right?
Not losing any of their abilities.
Not losing their abilities. What else?
Gratitude.
Gratitude. Okay, now we're introducing a whole nother sort of thing here. Gratitude. Kate.
Say connection, human connection.
Human connection. Okay, what else?
Purpose?
Purpose. That's really important. It has to do with meaning, right? We can put up with a lot of problems if we have meaning in life, can't we? Anyone else? What's a life well lived?
Experience, traveling, seeing, going.
Okay,
places.
experience, traveling. Yeah. What else?
Still being curious.
Still being curious.
Looking for answers, searching.
Looking for answers.
Learning.
How about contributing?
Sure.
How about a life where you're blessing other people? I mean, isn't that a life well lived too? I mean, we've all known people that still had their mental faculties and they were still physically able, but they were a pain in the neck to be around.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
And when they got to the end of their life, people went, right?
Yeah.
So that's not a life well lived. A life well lived has to do with our interaction with other people and gratefulness and some other issues, right? It has to do with faith in some people. Yes?
I think the example of Queen Elizabeth II was a life well lived.
Yes.
2 days before she passed, she was with the new Prime Minister and welcomed her into the British government.
Yeah, that's a great example of a life well lived, isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Here's the next question. To be well lived, how long would your life have to be?
Till you die.
This raises a whole nother idea, doesn't it? I mean, have you known people who died at how about Martin Luther King Jr.? Was his a life well lived?
Yeah.
Did he make a big difference in our country?
Yes.
Did he live to old age? No. So we've got some other factors here, don't we? How about the life of Christ? Was that a life well lived? It was only 33 years long. So there's a whole lot of things I want you to think about in addition to nutrition tonight. How long do you want to live? Anybody? One more year, right, at least? Another few years? The question there is, okay, how long do you want to live? What's that decision based on? Quality. What else would a decision about how long you want to live be based on?
Independence.
Independence. What else?
Affordability.
Affordability. I just had a person in my office and he said, I don't mind dying, I just don't want to outlive my money.
Right.
You know, I didn't think about those things 20 years ago, but I'm becoming an expert in aging. And in another 15 years, I'll be a much better expert in this. Yeah, something we learned. Just think about that. Some people want to live a long time for selfish reasons. That's probably not the best reason. So here's one other thing before we get on diet. Even the best diet does not convey immortality. You can choose the best diet and still have serious health problems because of genetics or our environment. Does that mean, oh, let's all go home and not worry about diet? No. But you know, sometimes we sit around and we say, well, that person got this disease, I'll bet they didn't eat right. Not necessarily. Yeah. Did anyone here grow up in a world that had no pollution? No. How about our children today? Do they suffer with more pollution than we did growing up?
Yes.
Oh yeah, particularly in the oceans. And that affects us all, doesn't it? And one of the things we need to think about that I've mentioned before is eating not only to age well, but eating in such a way that our planet does a bit better and our children can age well. The environmental impact of the diet we choose is really important. You know, in the last 2.5 years, what's happened to the average life expectancy in America? How much has it dropped by? Couple years, that's right, by 2 years. And a lot of that had to do with the health of our population being not optimal, so when COVID struck, they were much more susceptible to getting it. So all of these things we need to think about when it comes to health. Now, I'd like to shift into diet itself, and there are 4 things that I want to talk about, and that is what are the causes of aging that can be modified with dietary choices? And there are basically 4 of them. The first is glycation, and I've talked about that. I'm going to hit it again tonight. The second is toxin exposure. The third is oxidative stress. And the fourth is either excess or inadequate nutrients and calories. And I've split those out. They're usually not split out because calories are nutrients too, but I want to make a difference between them because usually we think about nutrition in terms of calories. But I want you to think about some of these nutrients too, the spices and the green and the other nutrients in addition to just calories, okay? And those are also important when it comes to aging. Well, let's start with glycation. What is glycation? You remember? All right, glycation is a chemical process that was first described in 1912 by a French chemist, And he wondered why when you heated food, it browned. It turned brown, like when you toast bread. And he found that one of the processes there is sugar attaching to protein or fat or carbohydrate. Actually, not to it's carbohydrate attaching to protein and fat. And that happens when you heat food at high temperature. And we used to think that didn't bother because, you know, you ate it and digested it, and if it was glycated outside your body, it wouldn't affect you inside. But we know now that when you glycate food and then eat it, it affects your body and what you build from that. So we want to talk about reducing the glycation in our food, but the major source of glycation occurs in our bodies when we eat. And we measure this in diabetics all the time. Any diabetics here? Okay? So when you go to your doctor, he says your what? Your hemoglobin A1C is too high or too low. And he says that means your sugar's been too high or too low. But what he also should say, or she should also say, is your hemoglobin A1C is high. That's glycated hemoglobin, which means you're aging at a more rapid rate than you otherwise would. If you get your blood sugar down, your glycated hemoglobin will drop and you will age more slowly. Because glycation occurs not only with hemoglobin, but with every protein in our body and with fats in our body and with our DNA. In fact, diabetics, if you get diabetes at 50 years of age and have average control, you will accelerate aging enough to die 9 years younger on average. The average 50-year-old who gets diabetes, they shorten their lifespan by 9 years by this process of glycation. If you think about that red cell, and I've used this illustration before, the red blood cell is 7 to 8 microns in diameter. It has to flow through capillaries, here it is, that are 3 to 4 microns in diameter. The only way that can happen is for that red cell to deform and slide through that capillary. But if it has sugar attached to it, it is stiffened and it can't get through there unless you increase the pressure. So if you have increased glycated hemoglobin, you're going to have increased blood pressure. But hemoglobin's not all that glycates. So does the protein in the little capillary. Stiffens it. Have you ever heard of hardening of the arteries? One of the causes is glycation, that sugar attaching to the protein. Anytime you consume foods that have refined carbohydrates in them, you are accelerating your aging through this glycation process. Have you ever gotten up in the morning and you were a little stiff? Anyone here experience that? Yeah. Guess why that is? You've glycated the proteins in the joint capsule and in the cartilage, and it takes a while to get moving. Anyone here have cataracts? Yeah, beginning. Why? Because you've glycated the protein in the lens. And glycated protein browns, remember the toast, browns, and if you glycate that protein in your crystalline lens, it browns and you can't see through it. It's called a cataract. So this affects all of our body. You can glycate DNA. That's why diabetics have double the risk of cancer, because of glycation. And so you'll want to reduce your sugar intake. Sugar's not a poison. It's what our body runs on, but you don't want to have too much dumped into your body at one time, because if you do, as the concentration of the sugar rises, the amount of glycated end products rises and your aging process is accelerated. Sugar clogs the system. That was written by a Mainer in about 1900. She grew up in Portland. And she's written a lot about health. That was Ellen White. But it's true. Glycation is not what we want. Now back to food. You want to eat your food not cooked at high temperature. And Jamie Uribari in 2012, I guess it was, wrote the article published in Journal of American Dietetic Association where he took 500 different foods and figured out how many glycated end products per 100 grams in 500 different foods. And we know now that if you take a potato and you boil it, it has about 10 grams of glycated end products per 100 grams. But if you French fry it, it has 1,544 kilounits of aged products per 100 grams. Well, which do you want? Well, I'll take it boiled or baked, yeah, rather than French fried. A classic is chicken. You take it and you boil chicken with lemon in it, which helps to inhibit glycation, and you get about 900 kilounits of aged products per 100 grams. If you fry it, you get 9,000, and if you barbecue it, you get 18,000 kilounits. Which is going to age you the most? The high temperature cooked food. And so if you really want to do your neighbor in, all you have to do is invite them over for bacon and eggs. And bacon has 91,544 kilounits of aged products per 100 grams. That illustrates several things. The higher temperature it's cooked, and the farther it is from the plant kingdom, the more aged products you get. But even nuts, if they're heated, if they're roasted, they can have as much as 7,000 kilounits of aged products, which is why I recommend raw nuts whenever possible. Okay, so that's glycation. Any questions about it?
Can you name just a few foods that we would normally eat that we shouldn't, or?
Yeah, anything that's barbecued or fried at high temperature, or foods that are brought to the smoke point. However, all fruits and vegetables, the more colorful they are, they don't want to be glycated, and if they're whole food, they have very low levels. A banana has 9 kilounits, an apple has like 12 kilounits of aged products. Berries, it's very low. You only get into the high numbers when you start to fry it, or if it's plant-based, if you fry it or cook it at high temperature.
So if you were going to eat an egg, like a fried egg would be worse than, say,
Than a boiled egg, yes.
poached egg?
And I wouldn't recommend you eat an egg anyway, but if you're going to, you want it cooked, you want it boiled, ideally, yeah. Or poached.
So the digestive process doesn't break down any of
It breaks down some of it, but not all of it. A perfect example that I often use is if you were building a house and the lumber truck arrived and you looked at the lumber on the back of it and it was all twisted and warped, and what would you do? You'd send it back. You should do the same with your food. Don't eat glycated food, because you have to build your body with that. And the result is it causes inflammation, which is going to come as number 3. But number 2, yes, go ahead.
How about sugar versus honey or?
Yeah, it doesn't really matter. Honey, sugar, any of the refined carbohydrates can do it. Now, am I against sugar? No. You just need to have it with fiber, so you slow the absorption of the sugar into your body. Remember, sugar's not a poison. Your body runs on it. If I told you gas was toxic for your car, what would you say?
I would use it.
No, you'd say, you're crazy. I can't run my car without gas. You can't run your body without sugar, but you don't take your car and pour gas all over it and then get in to start it. No, and it's the same with your body. You don't want to swamp your body with sugar. You want a gentle, constant absorption of sugar. And that's what happens with fruit, because it's loaded with fiber. That's what happens with whole grains, but not with white flour. That's what happens with natural whole foods. And we're going to get to potatoes in a minute. That's what it's here for.
What do you think of M&Ms with peanuts?
M&Ms with peanuts are they're certainly better than eating the sugar alone. And with peanuts, it's certainly better than without the peanuts because you will slow the absorption of the sugar. It's a great point. But chocolate, if you're going to have it, get the extra dark semi-sweet. There are a lot of good antioxidants, and that's number 4 in chocolate. I'm not going to tell you not to have sweets, but you want to have them with lots of antioxidants in them to protect you, and you want as much as possible fiber in there to slow the sugar absorption. Again, sugar's not a poison. It's all about the speed at which you absorb it. And one of the worst things for you is soda, or sweet drinks, or even fruit juice. You're far better off to have the fruit, because when you make fruit juice, you chuck the fiber. Fiber's really the key when it comes to understanding carbohydrates. You need lots of it, and that's the way nature packs it. Okay, now on to toxin exposure. How many of you have heard of Rachel Carson? She wrote a book long ago called Silent Spring, right? And what did she discover? The higher up on the food chain, the more toxins and the quicker the animals died, right? Well, all right, eat low on the food chain. That's the bottom line when it comes to toxins. Eat organic when you can, and eat low on the food chain. I have a friend who is a deep sea diver. He holds the world record for deep sea free dive. He's been all over the world diving and taking pictures. National Geographic recently asked him to go back to places where he has taken pictures before, and because he's put the latitude and longitude to the second whenever he's taken a picture so he could go right back and do it again. And he refused. And they said, nobody says no to National Geographic. Why did you do this? He said, it's too depressing. It's too depressing. He told me that 2 years ago he went to some South Sea islands. They're a little group of islands that are uninhabited. And he had been there 20 years before, and they were pristine. No people lived there. The sea life was abundant, beautiful coral. He went back there 2 years ago, and he said there was no life at all. Bales of plastic 6 feet high on all these white beaches, and he went diving, and he said you were swimming in a sea of plastic. If you get fish out of the ocean today and you get it out and cut it finely and look at it under a microscope, you'll see many, many microparticles of plastic, which are endocrine disruptors and cause lots of problems. We've polluted our world. Eat low on the food chain if you want to live long and age well. Really important. I'm not saying never eat fish. I'm not saying never eat some other things, but eat low on the food chain wherever you can if you want to minimize your toxin exposure. That's not new information. It's just more important information because unfortunately our world is more polluted in many ways than when Rachel Carson was alive. Oxidative stress. Everything you eat you have to burn, right? You burn those calories. Is that good for your body or bad? Both. You can't live without burning calories. It's just like, when you drive your car, you got to burn gas. Is your car going to last longer if you burn gas or if you put it up in a museum in a nice controlled area and never put gas in it? Well, your car will last longer in a museum, right? But we can't do that with our bodies because we can't stop going like a car can. So we have to burn fuel, but burning fuel causes inflammation. Inflammation, burning, oxidation, and that's necessary for life, and yet it is hard on our bodies and causes problems. So how do you get around that? Well, what you do is you eat a diet that's high in antioxidants. Now here's why I have this potato here. This was grown in my garden this year, and I only grew this kind of potatoes. And if you slice it open, look at that. That's a purple potato. Why did I only grow purple potatoes this year? Because I read a study where they took white potatoes and they fed them to people, and then after their meal, they drew blood on them and measured their inflammatory levels. They measured SED rates and they measured C-reactive protein, high sensitivity C-reactive protein. And after you eat white potatoes, you're burning them, right? Your C-reactive protein inflammatory markers go up. And then they took the same people another day and fed them yellow potatoes, and their inflammatory markers went up, but only half as much as when they fed them white. And then they fed them purple potatoes, and their inflammatory markers went down. Because there are so many polyphenolic antioxidants, anthocyanins in purple potatoes, that the inflammatory markers didn't go up when they burned the potatoes. Anyone want to take this one home? It's a good one.
I actually just started eating those.
Yeah.
How do they taste?
How do they taste? Well, when you close your eyes, they taste about the same. But I had purple mashed potatoes for Thanksgiving dinner last year, and I had to close my eyes when I was eating them. But I've gotten used to it now, and you know the interesting thing is we grew potatoes. We got about 225 pounds, which is more than I need to eat in a year. So I gave a 25-pound box to my son, who has 3 daughters and a little boy, but the daughters won't eat anything but purple potatoes. They like the color. The only thing that would go faster would be pink potatoes, but I don't have those. So,
I've seen purple skin.
yes, this is purple all the way through. And I'll tell you, there's a real important lesson here, and that lesson is, whenever possible, eat colorful food, because antioxidants follow color. Should you take a pill and then eat what you want? No. The antioxidant needs to be mixed intimately with the calories and digested that way and burned that way for maximum oxidation reduction or inflammation reduction. That's a really important concept. Now, let's broaden that. How about sugar? It causes inflammation. But if you eat the sugar in the beet, we make sugar out of beets, right? Are you going to get as much inflammation? No. How about consuming oil? Does it cause inflammation? Yes, but if you eat that oil in the avocado that's packed with lutein, are you going to get as much inflammation? No. And if you happen to have it with greens, even less inflammation. You getting the picture? Yeah. Oxidation is necessary for life, but minimize it by having lots of antioxidants in the food. And that's basically eating the rainbow. All right, here's the next one. Excess or inadequate nutrients and calories. Well, I've already covered it. As far as this, you want to have lots of these kind of nutrients, right? And you want to have enough calories, but not too many calories. Why is that? Well, what if you went to the gas station and you got there and you said, now I know my tank holds 20 gallons of gas, but I really don't like to stop at the gas station very often, so I'm going to put 20 in the tank and 5 in the back seat in a can. And you carry that around, what's the load on the car going to be? How about the strain on the engine? Just a little more, not much. What if you did that every day for about a year? What's your car going to look like? You ever seen anybody that looks like that car? Yeah, that's wear and tear on your body. That's excess calories. And that fat that you carry around, just like that gasoline that you're carrying around, is inflammatory. And if you carried around your car full of gasoline that you didn't need and you had an accident, you'd have an explosive situation. But when you're carrying fat you don't need along with you, that causes inflammation as well. And so don't eat more than you need. There are many, many studies that show that restricting calories lengthen life. Now you don't want to go too far, because if you don't have a little extra on your body and you get nausea, vomiting, or something like that, or a pneumonia, and you can't eat because you're really sick, you need a little bit extra, particularly once you pass 80 years of age. And we know from studies, both recent and several years ago, that once you pass 80, having a little extra on board is good. Until then, I want you all skinny. Past 80, you can put on some weight, because the causes of death start to shift a little bit. And so you don't want to have inadequate nutrition, and you don't want excess nutrition. You with me so far? All right.
Do you have a formula for what the calories should be on a restrictive diet?
Yeah, I don't have a calorie count, but I can tell you this. The easiest way is this. For men, don't let your waist get more than 35. And for women, not more than 32 to 33. Because women are built differently than men, in case you hadn't noticed. And if it's more than that, you're carrying too many calories. And you know, a tape measure will tell you a lot. More than you want to know. Probably. Okay. So, because you can be, quote, overweight, Arnold Schwarzenegger at his peak was overweight, but his waist was great. Yeah, okay. And women that carry their weight on their hips, but have kept their waist, I don't worry about their weight too much, just because of insulin levels and some other things. All right, so dietary recommendations to prevent premature aging. 1, avoid excess sugar and refined carbohydrates and cooking at high temperatures. That's the glycation issue. 2, eat low on the food chain. That's the toxin issue. 3, minimize the intake of calories with few or no antioxidants and choose color. And 4, choose foods that are higher in fiber and lower in caloric density. You're better off to eat olives than olive oil. You're better off to eat avocados than avocado oil.
So where does protein fit in this? I've read about aging, how we need a good quality protein, we need more protein. Is that
Not really true.
not true?
You need a good quality protein, but how are you going to define that? What I can tell you is if you eat a lot of animal protein, you will age your kidneys more rapidly and you will age your bones more rapidly, because you have to excrete the protein you don't need. If you eat carbohydrates you don't need today, you'll store them. If you eat fat that you don't need today, you'll store it. If you eat protein you don't need today, you have to excrete it. And if you excrete it as uric acid in the urine, strains the kidneys, and ages the bones as well. Protein is really important. Most of us get plenty. If you get to advanced age, it's important to get enough. And sometimes people living alone don't eat well. And they may need to be careful of protein, but most of us get plenty of protein. But it's a great question that's usually trumpeted by the American Meat Board and the American Dairy Association. Most of us get plenty of protein. But it's a great question. All right. So here's a study that was published by the Harvard School of Public Health. They looked at over 40,000 people And they found 5 factors that predicted a lifespan 10 years longer than average. And here they are: eating the recommended amounts of vegetables, fruits, nuts, and whole grains. 2, limiting red and processed meats, beverages with added sugar, avoiding trans fats and excess sodium. Getting at least 3.5 hours of moderate or vigorous exercise weekly. Limiting alcohol to 2 or less drinks for men and 1 or less drink daily for women. And not smoking. Now I want to just touch on alcohol first. There are many studies that show what's called a J-shaped curve when it comes to alcohol consumption. Everybody knows that more than 2 for men or more than 1 for women, your risk of death goes up. And it goes up the more you drink, the faster you age and whatnot. But if you come down, there's a point at which if you don't drink at all, the risk goes up a little bit. And this has been looked at again and again. And what they finally figured out is this. There's a group of people in the studies that have just quit drinking because they're alcoholic and they've been told they have cirrhosis or other diseases, and so they've quit. And when they interview this whole group of people, these people say, we don't drink, and they're at high risk for dying. And so they say, well, you got to drink a little. No, you don't have to drink a little for health. There's no evidence to that. The evidence shows that if you've been drinking a whole bunch and then you quit, you're still at higher risk for dying for a while. That's what it shows. Don't go out and have a drink so that you'll be healthy. There's no evidence of that. Every drink kills brain cells. And if you're going to drink alcohol, drink a really high quality drink that you really, really like. Do it infrequently and only after you've eaten a big meal, because you're going to slow the absorption and you'll decrease the toxicity of it. 1 drink a week increases a woman's risk for breast cancer measurably. Anybody want to volunteer? No. So just keep that in mind on that alcohol. Any questions so far? Yes.
Talk about different types of milk, like soy milk and almond milk.
Okay. What about plant-based milk versus dairy? First of all, dairy I'm going to talk on later. Is it later this year or next? On osteoporosis, and we'll talk about it for men right now. Harvard did the study published in 2001 showing men with the highest intakes of dairy have a 400% increased risk of death from prostate cancer. Anybody want to sign up for dairy? I read that study and I lost my taste for cheese, because now when I even look at cheese, but if I taste it, I think this tastes like prostate cancer. And I don't want that. Other studies haven't shown quite that marked an increase, but every study showed an increased risk of prostate cancer. And so I don't want it. Women, the risk of breast cancer goes up with dairy. But the other milks, the question is, which is the best? It depends. It depends on whether you're allergic to soy. It depends on whether you have other allergies. And then I would encourage you to look at the carb to fiber ratio in each of the milks. And you'll find that the best carb to fiber ratio is in soy, because it has the most fiber. And people say, but soy is bad for you. No, it isn't. It has bad press, but it's not bad for you. It's actually one of the best. But I don't mind if you have almond milk, or if you have oat milk or cashew milk. They're all fine. They're good for you. I'd caution you on coconut milk if you have high cholesterol, because it has a saturated fat, and saturated fat, whether it's from coconut or from pigs or from beef or from palm oil, raises cholesterol. Okay, so I'd caution you on that. It tastes great, although I like soy better. But the other milks are fine. I think one of the oat milks is great.
And always choose unsweetened.
Yes, always choose unsweetened, and the unsweetened soy tastes great to me.
And for soy milk, always organic.
Yes.
And soy is great, but not if it's processed.
Right, and if you want to eat soy in the best form, it's edamame beans or as whole as you can get it.
Tempeh.
Tempeh, we got a tempeh maker here. Look for Toots
Tootie's Tempeh.
Tootie's Tempeh made in Maine. It's coming soon. We may try some in a recipe here before long, but I want to taste it first, and he said he'd help me.
It's a superfood.
Okay, so this is a list of things actually extracted from Michael Greger's Daily Dozen. Anybody heard about that? There you go. But if you want to slow your aging, here's what you want to eat. And you know, Cheryl couldn't have chosen a better food, because if you look at her this list of things that you should have, she's got lots of herbs and spices. She didn't get whole grains in there, did you? No?
Yep.
Were there whole grains?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, no.
But there were lots of vegetables, and there were the beans, and there were greens. And so she got 1, 2, 3, 4 of them right off the bat. But you want to have these, think of this daily. You want some beans or hummus or some sort of legumes. You want fruits, and particularly berries or black cherries. Those are rich in anthocyanins and antioxidants. If you have arthritis, get those berries or cherries in every day. They really help arthritis. You want to have some greens, including the cruciferous vegetables, which are particularly good. You want nuts and seeds. Flaxseed is excellent for you. I wouldn't recommend a half a cup a day, but a tablespoon or 2 of flaxseed a day is really good for you. Nuts have been shown to be good for you as well. Vegetables of all kinds, particularly the colorful, whole grains and herbs and spices. If you go on a whole food plant-based diet, don't forget B12. Some of us don't reabsorb it well, and you can become deficient, so either take a supplement daily, actually weekly, or maybe even monthly is enough, but get it checked or take a supplement. Don't forget exercise, and remember water. 6 glasses of water a day versus 3 or 4 actually will reduce your risk of stroke and heart attack significantly, almost as much as a statin, believe it or not. There was a study, when was that published? 2003 about. They looked at how much water people were drinking, and those that consume 6 or more glasses of water a day reduce their risk of stroke by 40 to 50%, and that's about as good as a statin, and it's a way lot cheaper. I'm not saying statins shouldn't be used, don't get me wrong. They can be very helpful in people that don't eat right and have bad genetics, but water is really important. Questions?
Dr. Howe.
Yes.
Flaxseed.
Flaxseed.
Then it better to grind them to get the, that out?
Yes, grind the flaxseed. Otherwise it goes straight through you. That's okay too. It'll prevent constipation, but if you grind it, you get the omega-3 fatty acids. Any other questions or comments? All right.
More of a comment, I guess, but over the past year, I've learned a ton, really spent a lot of time researching stuff, and a lot of doctors out there who are espousing different things, and many of them that you've mentioned years ago, Caldwell Design and Dean Ornish and those guys, but sometimes too, certain people will interview other doctors and act like they're friends or whatever, but I'm thinking specifically of Stephen Gundry.
Okay, let me talk about Stephen Gundry. The first thing you want to do is pull out T. Colin Campbell's rebuttal to his stuff. It is scathing.
And that's what
And the next thing you want to do, whenever there's a doctor who is talking about health and nutrition, keep reading and see if he has anything to sell. Okay? That's your first question. Look at Gundry's stuff. Does he have anything to sell? You bet he does. He makes his money selling stuff that you don't need. He talks about lectins, which are a non-issue. Gundry ought to be locked up, and maybe we'll get this on the net and I'll get in trouble, but I really don't care. Read Colin Campbell's comments on Stephen Gundry. It's incredible. I mean, always check the sources and always think, as I tried to do tonight, think physiologically. That's so very important to do. Does it meet the straight face test? Does it make sense with what you know? So very important. All
Thank you,
right.
Dr. Howe.